Okay, well, so welcome everyone. So my name's Alida Schuyler, and I forgot to ask anyone to introduce me, so I guess I'll introduce myself. So I am a recovery coach and have been coaching since 1997, as you'll hear a little bit as we go on. And I am a co-founder of Recovery Coaches International and a member of the International Coach Federation. Let's see, I graduated from Berea College in Berea, Kentucky. I have a master's in library science from the University of Kentucky. And, oh, I think that's probably enough. So, um, so this talk today, let me find my little, there we go. Um, there we go. This talk today is the first in a three-part series that is intended to help people understand where advanced recovery coaching came from and a little bit about, I think as we go, the focus is on advanced recovery coaching, but you'll begin to understand how it's independent and, a little different than peer coaching. So, so today we're looking at this first part, which is about looking backward into the future, how the past limits us, and three essential steps to freedom. And then the next ones they're really in this order because this is the order of the transformation that um, Werner Erhard suggested. So anyway, and that'll make sense as we go along. So the goals of this talk are to understand where advanced recovery coach came from. We're going to look at Erhard's formula for transformation, and we'll look at how that formula can be adapted for addiction recovery clients. And so this is the first one about being able to be complete with your past so that you can have the future you want. So I can see I have some animation on. Um, so I'm actually going to start with myself. So because for me, recovery coaching has a great deal of personal significance to me, and and so I'm just going to kind of back into this discussion about advanced recovery coaching and where it came from, in the sense that because I started some of it came from my own personal experience. I'm somebody who's in recovery from alcoholism and I guess what you might call hippie drug use. Um, and I got involved in coaching in 1997 when shortly after I'd moved to Seattle, Washington. And so I hired an MCC coach in 1997 and had both a very positive and a very frustrating experience with her. And the positives were that um, I learned a great many things that made it possible for me to become a successful person. So that the things I learned from coaching, and so I just want to say at this point in time, I had about maybe 14 years of continuous abstinence through Alcoholics Anonymous, and so I had learned a lot there, but there are many things I didn't learn there. So uh, from coaching, I learned about planning and goal setting and how to track my progress and how to be accountable. um, it was very important to me in getting an understanding of what I was good at and what my strengths were. And I just learned, a great many things that are essential to coaching that became important to me. That it's not that they didn't exist, but when I knew what my values were, when I understood what my principles were, I was a better decision maker. But some of it was quite painful, and some of the painful parts had to do with um, that I had a coach who knew nothing about addiction recovery, and so some of the things that that she did as a coach, that we'll go back and see why she was doing that, but um, it was really, I found it disempowering, and so part of that had to do with being told that my story about being an alcoholic was a limiting story and I should just drop the whole thing. Um, and I found that particularly not useful, because to me, being an alcoholic was a big step forward from being a drunk. So to me, the language was just fine. I had no problem with it. I think it really had more to do with her sense of stigma about those words. But anyway, so and the language police is how I thought of it, because every time I said try or should, the coach would jump on me and go, don't say should, don't say try, do it or don't do it. And so it didn't, what I found was that it didn't really change the way I thought, or but I became more careful of, not using words that would produce that reaction. Um, so and so there were good things and bad things about being coached. But one of the things I noticed, so I became a coach. I started coaching people really within a week of hiring my first coach. I also enrolled in two different coaching schools. Um, but anyway, I noticed that because of coaching, I I would sit in my home group AA meetings and think, gosh, if that person had a coach, they would get through that by now. They'd stay on track more easily. So I could really see that it was a pretty amazing resource for people in recovery. So eventually, I heard the word on the street was that it wasn't enough to be a life coach, because that's what I had been in the beginning. That now we needed to have expertise in something. We needed a niche or a niche, um, and so that was in 1990. Oh, so that shouldn't say 1991. That's the wrong year. Sorry. Um, it, that should say 2001. So sorry. But anyway, so in 2001, that was when that word came out, and I was trying to figure out what was my niche. And one of the definitions is that it's the place where you fit in. It's in biology. It's the natural environment or place where you fit. And so eventually I just recognized that where I fit was with addiction recovery. And so I also figured there had to be other life coaches out there who felt the same way. And so I started a special interest group via the International Coach Federation. And through that, began to find other um, people who were already trained as life coaches who wanted to work in addiction recovery. And one of those people was Andrew Susskind, and we co-founded Recovery Coaches International. And then the other thing that I did at that time was start developing a curriculum for training recovery coaches. Um, so so now I'm moving into a section where we're just really talking about the history of life and business coaching. But basically, advanced recovery coaching is a form of life coaching that takes best practices from addiction recovery and the skills of life and business coaching. And so there are various things that um, are principles or essential to that you would learn in any life coaching school. Things like the client has the answers, that this is a partnership among equals that's designed in service to the client. So the whole relationship is intended to be of benefit to the client. There's a very basic. There's basic set of skills, which are all probably refinements around questioning, listening, and reflecting. The other piece that I could see is that there were a lot of things that had been developed in addiction that, especially the research side of it, that weren't necessary. Some of them are definitely widely used, like the stages of change in motivational interviewing. But there's a whole lot of other best practices there that are not necessarily as well known. But in any event, my sense is that anything that would be considered an advanced recovery coaching would have the skills and the principles of life and business coaching, and marry that with best practices from addiction. So just kind of going back to the early history of where life coaching came from. Vicki Brock has written a book called The Source Book of Coaching History. It's about 800 pages, and it's basically her PhD. Um, and in that she traces this from Plato all the way on, all the way through, and it's a momentous collection of work. But the part that when we get into the modern times, that psychology and business. So, and on the business side, organizational development, consulting, um, all of those various business practices, and then the whole, the psychology. You can see the influence of Carl Rogers and Fritz Perls and all of that kind of stuff. All were the major influences that resulted in the development of coaching. So, um, and so she you can go and see what those direct relationships. I mean, she's got it all neatly laid out there. But she did a review of coaching literature and identified what she called influencers and came up with 366 of them. And then she sent out a survey that had, maybe this list of perceived influencers, and two names received by far the highest number of responses. So that was Thomas Leonard and Werner Erhard, or Werner Erhard. I probably call him Werner, but anyway. And because Thomas Leonard worked for Erhard, the original ideas that Leonard translated into coaching were ideas that originated with Erhard, and he's the creator of EST. He's a controversial figure, um, but if you do the research, you'll find that some of the controversy was really mostly stirred up by the news media, and that he actually wasn't a bad guy. Um, anyway, so today's stuff is more largely about Erhard and his contributions. We'll see what Leonard did with it more in the next one, but basically, Erhard worked with groups, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands at once, and created personal transformation. The whole personal transformation movement really was Erhard is, considered really the start of that in many ways. Um, and what Leonard did was take some of that stuff and move it from something that was done with a group to something that was done with individuals. So, just briefly with Thomas Leonard, he started the first coaching school. He trained and gave away the material that was used to start the other first training schools. He was definitely an individualist. well, he wrote the whole Coach U curriculum, and they're still using that. And he he helped start the International Coach Federation, but he broke away from it. So we'll learn more about what he did in the next one. But today we're really looking at Erhard. So Erhard, is considered, just a major influence. If you were to sort of trace all of the places that have been transformed, you would see it, especially in coaching and in business schools and business models and negotiations around the world. There's whole pieces about getting along and community and personal transformation, all of which come from Erhard. So the insights that he's credited with are particularly about um, how language creates reality for us. Um, and I would say the power of context is something we'll talk about next week when we talk about uh, having what it means to be in the present and to have a perfect presence. But he's also credited with really helping people understand what possibility means and how it influences us. So his really the whole piece that he does is sort of in service of this idea of possibility, but in order to get to possibility, you have to do a couple of things first. So with his power of language, he really wants people to understand that if they want something new to happen, they have to have a conversation that they haven't had before, um, and and it needs to be a conversation that has the power to create something new. Um, he, the S trainings were highly confrontational, but he wanted people to go through that experience so they would um, be able to understand that uh, no matter what happened to you, that's in the past, but what is continuing to influence you is whatever significance you assign to that, and that we have choice about how we interpret or what significance we give to things. That's a function of our own choice, um, and that this power of possibility, which we'll talk about a lot in the third talk, but that this is dependent on being complete with your past, but it's also done through language, and I think it will go on that piece will come a little clearer. So he had a specific way of um, dealing with transformation, and I have to say that there's when I think about this, I think about that phrase in the big book about a complete psychic change, because Earhart was wanted nothing short of that. He wanted a complete transformation, and he so anyway, and the reason that he wanted this and would start with the past was that he believed that we take our identity from what happened, but mostly from the stories that we make up about what happened, what it meant, and who we are. And that if you can really become complete with that, so the past doesn't have a charge, a negative charge, it's not influencing what you think of yourself, um, then you can create an entirely different future than and so if I were to use the kind of language you might hear in a 12-step meeting, I'm about to use bad language. So if you think you're a fuck up because you've been a drunk, that really is going to limit what you believe is possible for you in the present, or what you believe is possible for you in the future. So, um, his idea is that, if you can become complete with your past, you will have dealt with the events that happened, and you will have dropped the limiting beliefs. And when you do that, it frees up a great deal of energy, and you have the possibility of creating a future that's not influenced or dependent on what you believed in the past. And anyway, and so language is used to create that vision and possibility. So, but this next one, so he believes that, that uh, the future that we think we're going to have influences how we behave in the present moment. And so, again, the key is to be able to clean up your past, and in doing so, to be able to imagine a positive and inspiring future. And 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 when that vision is there, when that possibility um, for having a life that we care deeply about is there, it changes how we'll live in the present. So here's a quick review. I was trained as a life coach. I developed um, advanced recovery coaching as an offshoot of life and business coaching. And it's intended to create transformation in those who are facing addiction recovery. Um, and I believe that Earhart's formula for transformation is useful, and I mean very useful for addiction recovery. But I think it has to be changed a little bit from the way I saw it used. So we're going to look at some of the steps here. So this is simply about becoming complete with your past, because the present and the future will be in the next two talks. But um, So the person in addiction recovery has three things to do in order to become complete with their past. So the first one is about taking responsibility, really for themselves and for their past, and that doesn't mean that they assume um, that they caused all of that, but it does mean that you're taking responsibility for the beliefs that you developed out of what happened. Um, and then the next step is to change that story. And I think it's really vitally important that we change our physical experience. And so the rest of this talk will be about those things. So so Earhart talks, he believed that if we didn't become complete with our past, we were always living in reaction to it, and that we were stuck in bad stories. We were stuck with defending ourselves. We were stuck to, uh, you know, trying to either be better than our father was, or different from our brothers, or and but that everything was still a reaction, and that in that stuck place we throw away joy, vitality, love, and self-expression. So um sorry, I forgot this. So I think basically there's if we're going to be able to give up drug use, we need to believe that there's something that's more rewarding. So let's keep going here. Oh, sorry. It's okay. So the I think the first step to taking responsibility can be, it's done nicely in The Power of Ted, where he shows us Cartman's drama triangle that many of us are familiar with, and says that there's an alternative to that, and that's empowerment. Okay, so here's his empowerment triangle on, and so basically he's talking about shifting from having an identity in as either a victim or persecutor or a rescuer, and living out that identity, to developing an identity as the creator of our own life, which is really can only be done when you take responsibility. Um, and and so the creator is the alternative to the victim on the drama triangle. The challenger is the upgrade of the persecutor, and the coach is the upgrade of the rescuer. So, and I could spend a whole talk on just on this thing alone, and that's what you'll find here. We're just giving some really basic ideas here. So in terms of changing the story of your past, I'm pretty sure that um, that most people who have addictions have a past that includes probably more suffering than other people, and I'll give you some statistics on that later. But um, it's at least on a psychological and language level, it's it's not so much exactly what happened to us, it's the significance that we attribute to that. So if I've been neglected or abused, and with the best strategy for survival, that a child can come up with, I need to understand why this is happening to me, and I can either make up an early age decision about myself, or, and actually I think we'll be going into that a little bit, but these three skills: the early age decisions, the managing dissociation, and dealing with shame and codependency. I think these are the things that um, change change our experience of our past. And I'm going to continue a little bit more on the next slide with the early age decision. So so if I've been abused, if I've been neglected, I might say, I might make a decision, a belief, I might develop a belief about myself, which might be that I'm not lovable, or I'm not good enough. Um, or I might make up a belief about others that, um, that men are no good, or that mothers are bad, or that I can't trust anyone in the world. Um, or I'm completely on my own. Anyway, all of those types of beliefs that come out of the events of our childhood are what are continuing to influence us in the present moment. That event is basically done. I'd say there may be some physical things, and we'll get to that in a moment. But basically, that event is over. But these early age decisions are, they're the gift that keeps on giving, or really it keeps continuing to limit us when we live from those beliefs. So, however you decide to do it, whether it's through therapy, whether it's through working with a coach or whatever, but those early, and I say that because the coaches don't work with the primary traumas, but we might work with what you decided about yourself because of that. So um, anyway, I'll leave that for the moment. But each of those early age decisions that you can identify, you have the opportunity to replace it, because chances are it wasn't the complete truth. It was the best that you knew at the time, but now that you're an adult, you might have figured out that your parents were really busy, or they were really young, or they were also alcoholics, um, and that they didn't necessarily do those things because you were unworthy or unlovable. They were probably doing the best they could. Um, so anyway, so each of those uh, early age decisions can be transformed into a new belief that could be very likely as true, if not truer, than the one that you adapted long ago. And hopefully, you can come up with a more positive understanding of your life experiences, and replace those beliefs. I don't hear this talked about as much as I'd like to, but um, our physical reality has a big influence on our experience. And it's really important that people who are in addiction recovery make health a priority. And in doing so, that they begin to develop healthy habits, that they develop um, a support group that helps them stay healthy, um, or recover from the post-traumatic stress disorders, or all the other things that they experience, and that they choose a life in recovery that isn't um, kind of a replication of the drama that they experienced before. And so that's what I mean by becoming a stress-free person. So we're going to look at this in a little bit more detail here. And I'll say I didn't go into on the last slide. I didn't go into dealing with codependency, because there's a lot of information out there about codependency, and there's good information these days about dealing with shame from Brene Brown. I'm just starting to learn some of that myself. But anyway, we're going to go a little deeper here with the physical experience. So the fact of the matter is that most people who have had addictions have had uh, various types of traumas, and there's quite a wide variety. There's I mean, there's all kinds of sexual, physical, uh, spiritual, psychological abuses that occur. Many people had neglectful or divorced or mentally ill parents. They may have lived in a place that was filled with violence, whether that was an inner city drug zone, or whether that was um, just the culture of where you grew up, or whether that violence came from wars, which are unfortunately more common than it's a fairly common experience to have been somebody who was a soldier or nurse or whatever. Um, as you guys know, there's a lot of mental health co-occurring disorders. Many traumas are really the direct result of your own addictions, in the sense that you can be in accidents, or be uh, re-victimized because you're intoxicated and not in good control of yourself. There's a lot of diseases. Anyway, I just wanted to give that list so you'll see it in when we talk about this next piece. So there's something that's been around for some time. It's this was developed in the 1990s. This was a study done with 17,000 mostly white, mostly upscale patients enrolled in a Kaiser HMO, and they were asked whether they had experienced any of 10 different categories of childhood trauma. So, a lot of those, so we just saw some of them, uh, and they were scored on a scale of, depending on how many traumatic experiences they had endured. For each traumatic experience, they were given 1 point. So, if you had had four or more um, traumatic experiences as a child, you were 7 times more likely to be an alcoholic. These are compared to somebody who didn't have those. So, if they had a score of 0, and you have a score of 4, yeah. So you're 6 times more likely to have had sex before the age of 15. You're twice as likely to be diagnosed with cancer. You're 4 times more likely to suffer emphysema. Um, People with an ACE score of above 6 were 30 times more likely to have attempted suicide. Um, Students who have an ACE score of 4 or higher um, are much more likely to have problems learning in school or to have behavioral problems. So there's a lot to do in the sense of being able to recover on a physical level from either our childhood or the effects of experiences we had while intoxicated. So I just wanted to put a little plug in for, if you're a coach or if you're a person in recovery or somebody who works with people in recovery, you will do them a big favor if they really understand how imperative it is that they begin to take really good care of themselves. So, what your body wants and needs is pretty simple. It wants water, rest, exercise, that's movement basically, really good food, and it wants touch. We know that babies who don't receive touch don't develop well, they don't thrive. And we know among adults that adults who experience a lot of touch tend to make better decisions about sex. And because for many people, that's as an adult, that's their only experience of being touched. So if they have regular massage, I have to say I was a massage therapist for 8 years. Um, they they tend to make better choices about their sex life. A rapid response to illness, and that just means that you're really staying aware of your health, and if there's a problem, you don't ignore it. You work to resolve it. Um, so I I tell people to go watch the movie Sick, Tired. That's not it. Well, I'm going to call it Sick, Tired, and Nearly Dead. That'll probably go, if you Google that, you'll get the right one. That's not quite the right title, but that particular piece will give you a very good idea of the power of eating well. And they were doing juicing, and you see these two people who are, oh, it's called Sick, Fat, and Nearly Dead. These two men who are extremely obese and really ill get quite healthy. But food was our original and first best medicine, and it's a real problem these days. Okay, I won't get on the soapbox about that. Um, so these, if I've done a lot of different things with peak experiences, and I've never really heard anybody describe a peak experience that occurred when they weren't feeling well physically. So a great deal of our sense of happiness is derived from feeling good physically. So, um, and this last piece about choosing a satisfying and non-stressful life, I think that's particularly important also because there's such a tendency when somebody recovers to feel like, oh my God, I lost, I mean, I drank for 18 years. So when I sobered up, I felt like I had just so much to do to get caught up. And, I began a practice of working really, really hard. And that's not at all uncommon, but it in some ways that kind of, I don't think that one ever knows when to stop. And it's possible in recovery to create a life that's almost, I mean, it's not, it might be more satisfying, but it might be nearly as stressful as it was before. For one thing, you've taken away your major form of coping, whether it was alcohol or pot or God knows what. So there's no guarantee that your life in recovery is um, not likely to be stressful unless you really get good at learning how not to do that. Um, so the how not to do that. There's pieces out now of they're being researched as best practices, things like about learning how to meditate, um, and that kind of thing, and finding that people who learn to do that, that is a great relapse prevention tool. That ability to calm yourself. And I guess I will go back to one of the pieces that I didn't talk so much about. One of the most common experiences that can come out of some of that trauma that many of us experience in our backgrounds is dissociation. What is can be called splitting, or and it's also considered a mild form of, well, it's there is something called dissociative disorder, and the far end is dissociation that doesn't share consciousness, the three faces of Eve. But there's a lot of splitting or dissociation that is associated both with addiction and with PTSD. And that's the kind of thing that is it's the kind of thing where somebody goes, I have no idea how I ended up um, parked in front of my dealer's house. I don't remember making the decision to go there. I don't know. I was planning on going home and I found myself in front of the liquor store. Um, and so that kind of thing about splitting ends up being a something that if you don't have the skill to deal with that, then that adds a lot of stress to your life. So those pieces I was talking about earlier, about splitting or dissociation and shame, those also are contributors to stress that can just, without having them specifically addressed, they can just sort of be part of your life in recovery. They may be worse in recovery because you're not self-medicating. So anyway, I like the idea of people, coaches who work with addiction recovery, to really, have people assess whether they are living a life in the present that is good for their body and for their psyche. Because, well, anyway. So in terms of just reviewing this part two here, I'm going to take a quick drink of water. This can be done. The steps to doing that are this whole sense of really taking responsibility for your life and for what happened, and that really being responsible. I mean, responsible means able to respond, and so it's not about saying, it was my fault. It's really about just accepting that what happened happened, and what is, and uh, and from there, dropping a sense of self that says, I'm the kind of person that suffers. I'm the kind of person that doesn't get a break. I'm the kind of person. So really to choose to move off the victim triangle, the drama triangle, and to move on to an empowerment. To choose to be the creator of your life. When I mean that's a significant choice to make. It may take some time to achieve, but making the decision to do that is really quite powerful. Um, if you're going to be able to be complete with your past, you're going to need to change the story that you've created about what happened and what that said about you, and that involves those early age decisions. Um, and so, what I mean, the language of any one of those decisions can be reversed, and you may need to work with that. It may take some time to replace those beliefs, but it definitely can be done. And the other piece is to change your experience of what you're like in your body, of your health, of your vitality, of your energy. Because if you're going to go on from here to create this uh, future that is satisfying and possible now, if you become complete with your past, it's going to take some energy, and it'll take good health to do that. So you'll know that you're complete with your past when you're at peace with everything that happened. And I mean that just means that it doesn't have an emotional charge. You can think about what happened when you were 12 or what happened when you were 7, and um and be okay with it. It doesn't mean that there might not you don't recognize that it was a moment of suffering, but um you can also see, because you may have changed that early age decision, some ways in which something that you've learned from that it might have been, if you have the belief of a higher power, it might have been in divine order that those things happened, that it, for whatever reason you can decide whether it's character building or karmic balancing or what, but those things happened and you're at peace with what happened. um if you can't envision a positive future for yourself, there's still some work to be done in your past, um or possibly with your health. And because it really takes that freedom from those limiting beliefs to be able to imagine a future, and it takes the belief that you're going to have um, the the physical capacity to live your way into it. So if you can't, I mean, and I think that this is a place where, often our clients, if we're working with people, especially in early recovery, they come and all they know is what they don't want, which is it's a place to start. And so if they say, I just don't want to have hangovers, I'll say you want to wake up feeling good in the morning, and just begin to help them relanguage what it is they want, and begin to imagine, um, what can be possible, and be able to frame it in instead of the things they don't want, begin to be able to frame it in what they do want. Um, it'll be interesting when we look next week at the work of Thomas Leonard, what he did with Erhard's stuff, and turned it into Coach U practice. Um, but he really had extremely high standards for what he was willing to do and not do, how much help and support he needed. He didn't believe in doing anything you didn't like doing or you weren't good at. So he wanted a present life that included immense amounts of support, um, and good health, and a lot of joy. So I think it's not surprising for people to wonder if this is this really possible for people facing addiction recovery. I think I misspelled addiction up there, but anyway, um, addiction. So I love this quote from William R. Miller. He said, "Addictions are highly treatable, and a variety of effective treatment methods are available. When people who have developed alcohol or drug dependence recover, they really get better. You don't need to see you don't need subtle psychological measures to see change. They look better, they feel better, their family and social functioning tend to improve, they're healthier and happier, they fare better at work, school, and play, and contrary to public opinion, most of them do recover." And I would say that I think it's really natural to spend a lot of time in early recovery, developing the skills to be able to sustain abstinence, or if that's what you've chosen to do, or to stay safe if you're continuing to use. But I think a lot of times we really limit what we believe is possible for people, mostly by just focusing on that. And so there's a great deal of emphasis on relapse prevention and that kind of thing. um, I'm pretty sure that when people have a life that they really care about, that's the best form of relapse prevention. So that's my presentation, and I'd like to see if I can open this up for questions. And let me see if that's possible. So I see a number of people who have little questions marks beside their name. So I'm going to start with those people and unmute them. And I don't know whether that means that you really wanted to say anything or not, but um, let's see. I'm going to. Rebecca, is there anything you'd like to say? You had one of those question marks. Let's see. You may all be muted. Let me see if I can undo that. Hold on a second. Um, oh, all right. So I'm just gonna. So Rebecca, you're not muted if you'd like to say something.
It was a good presentation. Thank you. I didn't really have a question. I'm just actually writing a few things down.
Okie doke. So these are the people who have some sort of question mark beside their name. So what about Nikki Coyote?
Hey, Alita, thank you very much. Very good presentation. I didn't have a real question. I think my concern is that addiction is such a problematic um, thing in our community that affects everyone. And I think this is an important area to really focus and work on. And my hope is that someday that we could really find some long-term answers, in helping people so that the trauma that the trauma that children and women and everyone in the community experiences as a result of addiction will kind of lessen. I mean, that's my big vision.
Yeah.
And I know it starts working one person at a time. And I love the way you laid it out of, just, taking responsibility for, you know, our past and moving forward is a good start. And I guess in listening to this, I always think about, the innocence of children that are affected by addiction or illness or neglect or whatever, violence. Um, so I'm trying to blend that um, into the recovery too. I mean,
Okay.
the accountability of the perpetrator or you know what I'm saying, not just the person who has experienced the trauma, but also
Well,
I
you
don't
and
really
I could
know
have an
my question,
interesting
but
conversation about
it's
that.
a big long discussion, I
Yeah.
guess. But thank you for, I think this is the beginning, is really taking a look at, the healing process.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.
How about Melissa? Any? You have a little question mark beside your name. Okay. I'm just gonna look and see if there's anybody else. Okay. Justin Phillips. Any thoughts or comments? I don't know how you guys get question mark beside your name. So, all right, no words there. Oops. Hmm. Okay, so if there's anybody else that wants to say anything, there's. Let's try Colin quickly. If I can unmute you. Um,
Muted.
Colin, I think you're unmuted.
Yes, I am, Alita. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Colin.
Thank you so much. I got into recovery through Seattle, Washington.
Oh, you
Would you
did?
believe? Yes. And I'm just starting on. I've done various. I'm a CPA accountant, and but I'm involved in recovery uh, and moving away from alcoholism into recovery itself,
Ah,
because many, and that's what I caught from you, that the many people don't understand recovery, and many people don't seem to understand coaching.
right.
And it's kind of bridging the gap.
Yeah.
And the doors are opening up for me at the moment with coaching. But there's a sense of loneliness and quite a bit of uh, confusion about the way forward. And being complete with my past has been a bit of a moment which you have spoken about tonight, and that I'm going to start looking at that in some detail.
Okay. Yeah.
But just to say thank you, and I don't know how I get involved in recovery coaching, because there's very little in the UK. I've been asked to put together some kind of training material for recovery coaching, and I don't know where to start for myself.
Oh, Colin, if you'll send me an email, I'll put you in touch with some people that could
Yeah,
help you with that.
thank you so much.
Okay, it's at the top of the hour. I'm happy to stay for a few more minutes, but we're done with our presentation. So thanks so much for all of you for coming. If any of you want to learn a little bit more about the advanced recovery coaching training that's offered by Crossroads, go ahead and stay, and we can talk about that for a few minutes. But
Thank you.
all right.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, certainly, absolutely.
As a pathway into this, am I better to do a coaching diploma or certificate before I get into recovery coaching, or should I start with recovery coaching?
I think as long as you're being trained in a program that is actually going to teach you the life coaching skills,
Yeah.
that you can do that. The training that we offer at Crossroads teaches those skills, but we're looking at those skills in terms of how do they work with the people we're going to work with. So,
Yeah.
so all of those skills are you learning them, but you're also learning them with the nuances that'll make you effective at working with the people you intend to work with. Because the thing about most life coaching courses are intended for working with people who are highly motivated, high self-esteem, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anybody else? I'm going to try to unmute people. I'm going to unmute everybody if I can. And, oops, not, if it sounds like that, I'm muting you back. So those of you who have stayed, do you have any questions? Oops. Any questions about the training or anything like that?
I'd like to respond to
I can't tell who that
Yeah, as
is.
long as y'all don't turn off now. I'm a job then. I'm doing the training.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions?
I don't know.
Okay, I'm not able to hear anybody or to make this be very useful. So let me see one last thing here. Okay, there are some. Okay, so I'm going to mute you guys. I found a question list. And so one question is says explain what ACE or what ACE means. That is the name of this test that was done. If that's so, you can look up ACE, or you can look up. There's an article by David Brooks about that study that was done. But if you type in ACE and adverse childhood experiences or something like that, that would tell you more about that study. I don't know where anybody gets an ACE score unless they take the ACE test. And you just have to look into that a little bit more. I think it's offered mostly through schools. What does DDT? That's simply what David Emerald, who wrote the book The Power of TED, called the drama triangle. He called it the dreaded drama triangle, DDT. It's just a sense of humor. Let's see. I'm just looking to see if there's any more questions. One person is asking, can you tell me when your next training is and what I can expect to learn? So the next training starts in about 3 weeks. And in that, you're going to learn the life coaching skills that are taught in any ICF accredited training program, and to learn a lot about addiction recovery, and particularly, basically how to take people through this transformational process in a sense, um, so that you can move somebody through all of this. Um, so I let's see. I have a slide that I can put up that has a lot of information about some of the. I have no idea what you guys actually see on my screen. Um, so there's a recovery coaching model that I've developed. The Power of TED. That's the triangle, the empowerment triangle. Um, you'll be really good at reflecting, questioning, and listening. We teach nonviolent communication. You learn a fair amount about stages of change in motivational interviewing. Um, Lots about various types of addictions, how to clear triggers, which is really that kind of overdone emotional reaction that means that there's something from your past that you're not complete with. And those things are, if you can know how to deal with that, then you don't have to spend your time not being able to stand your coworkers or things like that. There's a lots and lots of pieces that are really what I would call, um, skills that make it easier for someone to stay in recovery. Um, and so that would include the focusing, the flooding. Um, there's a lot of it is about trying to understand why we change and why we don't change, and what what that means and looks like. So it's a long and extensive course. It takes a year to complete, and and so if you're interested in that, then the thing to do is to send me an email, and we'll set up a time to talk about it, and see whether we'll just talk about it and see whether it seems like it's a good fit for you and a good fit for the training, and if so, that would be great. Okay, so I think we're really done here. Let's see if there's any other questions. There's a lot of thanks. I can answer that. I don't know what she was going to answer, but okay. Well, thanks all of you. I've enjoyed being
Can I have
here,
one
and I
quick
look.
question, Ida?
Yes, go ahead.
Can this be done distance?
Yeah,
I'm in the
absolutely.
UK.
It can be done over the phone.
Yeah.
Um, and you probably would want to wait till spring because you'll need to take the one that starts in the morning because then it'll be evening in the UK.
Yeah.
So that would be the next one, probably in May.
Okay.
Okay. All righty. Well, I'm going to
Thank
say
you very
goodbye
much.
to all of you, and thanks. And I wish you all the best. And I'm going to say hi to Dana. And okay, I'm hanging up. Bye bye.